Good evening and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
Myself, Stephen George. Good evening.
Good evening. It's Sunday, the 20th of May, 2018, and we have a packed show. We've loads of information to talk about and an interesting guest, a lady called Helen Hensley, who's a speaker and healer, and she does a lot of other things as well, which we'll go through. Helen was on the show for about 20 minutes when we were doing the intro to the speakers for the Open Mind Conference. So we asked her to come back. We said we'd do a full show with her, and we've asked her to come back, and she politely accepted. And so we're going to be talking to Helen in a few minutes. But before we do anything else, let's find out what the communication channels are.
Okay, let's find out what the communication channels are, please, Mary.
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
Yes, thank you, Mary. The OYM chat room can be found at oymradio.com. If you have a username and password, you can just log in there. And that's the place to be for asking questions. And there's a nice friendly bunch of lads and lasses already over there, so we'll say a big hi to everyone logged in. We also monitor People's Internet Radio chat room as well for your questions. And there's an equally friendly bunch of lads and lasses over there as well, and a big hi to all of those. And obviously a big hi to everyone who's listening around the world on the World Wide Web as well. What else we got? Yes, info@oymradio.com is the email address if you'd like to drop us an email just to say hi, or let us know where you're listening from. If you're a first-time listener or a long-time listener, you can let us know if we're doing it right, doing it wrong, need improvement or whatever. We also have the phone number as well, 046 927 1212. That's from within the Republic of Ireland. If you want to ring from outside, it's 00353 469 271212. And on the website there, we've loads of information and links to great information, and the TuneIn Radio application, as we mentioned before. A lot of people are actually using that and listening to us across the globe through the internet, the magic that the internet is. And I think that's it. Oh.
Right, okay, let's start off. Just a couple of things. Now, I'm sure you're aware now of Gordon and Linda. We talked about Gordon and Linda, the couple that were evicted from the home in Balbriggan. And thanks to KBC Bank. And we received a substantial donation from one of our OYM listeners last week, Dougie. A big thank you, Dougie, for that donation, because the couple are now homeless and they're couch surfing at the moment. So what we did is we sent over Dougie's donation, which was very generous, and we added a few quid to that as well. So thanks to the OYM listeners for your donations, because that meant that we could help Gordon and Linda as well. And they were very, very grateful, and he just said a big thank you to everybody who contributed. It was very humbling for them, and they were speechless. But look, it's brilliant. It'll help them out in a little way, and hopefully they'll get sorted. Now, what we said we'd do was, the rest of the donation will go towards the Mead Food Bank for helping struggling families. What myself and Steve have agreed on is that we'll split the donation when we do the auction. We're doing the auction at the moment, that whoever makes the highest bid gets to have lunch with myself and Steve, and the bid that comes in will actually go towards the food bank. So what we've decided to do...
It's been downgraded, has it?
Which?
It was dinner, it's now lunch. It will be breakfast next week.
McDonald's. So when we have that sorted, we're going to run it till the end of the month, so it'll be 2 weeks, okay? So when we get the money in for that, what we're going to do is we're going to divide it in between two food banks, and we want to send it over to the two people involved with the food banks. I think that's the right thing to do. So a big thank you, I say, to Dougie for his generosity, to Gordon and Linda. A big thank you to the OYM listeners who donate, and some of the funds from there went over to help Gordon and Linda as well, because what they went through was just unbelievable. I mean, imagine being jailed and your name isn't even on the actual mortgage, and when the judge says property and Linda said dwelling, and the word dwelling's in the Constitution, so she had the right to say it, and they wouldn't accept the word dwelling, and they locked the two of them up for contempt of court. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Really, really, it's just madness, So anyway, that's just to say a big thank you for everybody for doing that. It made two people very happy last week. So thanks again, Steve.
Yeah, some news from the journal.ie and extra.ie. It says a woman is refusing food in prison after being jailed last week for contempt of court in a case involving the repossession of her home. The Dáil heard yesterday. Independent TD Matty McGrath raised the woman's case yesterday in the Dáil, telling the Minister for Justice Charlie Flanagan that she had failed to surrender her house and was jailed for contempt on Friday. This is day 6 and she is refusing food, he said, adding that the vulture fund involved in the case, the receiver and the woman, had been in discussions to resolve the issue when she was held in contempt. Last Friday evening late, the High Court ordered detention of the woman at the Women's Detention Centre in Mountjoy Prison, Mr McGrath said. European law does not allow the judges to jail citizens in this way. The Supreme Court actually heard an appeal this year on this very issue when the human rights organisation, the IRHO, also joined in to highlight this unlawful behaviour of the state in the manner how people are jailed at the request of banks and vulture funds and the Irish state. The decision is awaited from the Supreme Court. So what is going on? In the meantime, this person is still in jail and she has 2 young teenage daughters being cared for by family members. In his response, Minister Flanagan said it would not be appropriate to comment on individual cases without all of the details. I think that's their get-out clause for everything. No one ever wants to comment on the individual case, but you know, when you go to them with the individual case, that's what you want. You want them to comment on it. You don't want them to generalise.
Yeah.
Yeah, another waste of time.
Oh, we'll keep voting these people in, and people will still get treated like crap, basically, and they'll never learn. They'll never learn, you know. You just remember, we don't have a government. I hope people are aware of this. We don't have a government. We have a corporation. Ireland Inc. Ireland is a corporation. It's not a government. We haven't had a government since 1919 or 1922, whenever the Constitution was put together. We had a country for 3 years, but no, there's no government. It's a corporation, and you know by that when you go into the courts and certain things are missing, and the yellow round flags and EIRE is missing from the harp above the judge's head and all this kind of stuff. You know, it's a corporation. Also. Right, okay. And I'll just say thanks to Thomas from THI for telling us about this. He mentioned it on his show on Thursday, and it's an article in the Irish Times, and it said, a new campaign calls on Irish households to pledge a bed for Syrian refugees. Advertisement calls for nation to put an empty space to better use. A national campaign calling on Irish house owners to pledge a bed or an empty home to Syrian refugees has been launched. The Irish Red Cross, a bit suspect that, Irish Red Cross wants people to consider offering a spare bedroom to a Syrian refugee to use for up to a year. The charity is also calling for the owners of vacant standalone properties, including apartments, houses and converted accommodation, to offer the space to a refugee family. The Irish Red Cross said any refugee housed through the register would be paired with a caseworker and provided with educational, health and employment support. Once the refugee is placed in the accommodation, their name will be put on a local authority housing list so that when a home becomes available, they can move into a longer-term living arrangement, the charity said. The latest campaign follows advocacy group Uplift's 2015 Pledge a Bed campaign, which resulted in more than 830 offers of accommodation, goods and services. The Irish Red Cross has chosen by the government to manage the register of pledges and vet those who had offered spaces. However, it took more than 2 years for the first group of refugees to be housed in early 2017. Now, I do sympathise with the refugees, Syrian refugees, and what they've been through, because it's not their fault. But, you know, unfortunately, I am a believer of charity begins at home, and we do have a homeless crisis in our own country. And yet, we're putting Syrian refugees up in houses where we could put our own people in. Now, as I say, I sympathise with them, and it's not nice what happened in their country, and it wasn't their fault. But we do have homeless people here. I think we should fix our own problem first before we start helping other people outside the country. And that's just how I feel about it. That's just my opinion. Because when you see these homeless people, as we did when we went down to the You're Not Alone people in the night we went down, I went down on the Friday night and we were doing the food for the homeless people. There was loads of people. I mean, 200 and something people turned up on that night alone. So we have these issues, and people are why are they evicting people from their homes, like Gordon and Linda, and this lady who Steve just read out about? Why are they evicting from their homes when they're looking for places to put Syrian refugees? I'll tell you, when Michael D and Leo Varadkar and all the politicians in the Dáil start giving up their empty spaces to the Syrian refugees, maybe I'll consider it. But I think what they're trying to do is, well, they want everybody else to do it, but they won't do it themselves. And I'd be very surprised getting any of them politicians in the main parties giving up their bedrooms and their spaces and their rental properties to Syrian refugees. Let's see if that happens. You know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, as they say. So let's see if they do that. And if you hear anything about it, let us know. But that's just my feelings on it. Steve, how do you feel about it? Do you have an opinion on it?
Well, sometimes I say opinions are like...
Yeah, I know, yeah.
You know. Look, at the end of the day, yeah, we do have problems here. Every country has problems, and I think, yeah, it's great when governments are seen to be, trying to solve problems in other people's countries. It's a PR exercise. That's all. That's really all it is. Because we've all got problems, and get your own house in order first.
Yeah,
that's it, plain and simple.
And
I'm up next.
Last one on the list.
With number 4, gizmodo.com.au. Australia bans cash for all purchases over 10 grand. Starting from July 2019. It says Australia's Liberal Party government has announced that it will soon be illegal to purchase anything over 10k with cash. The government says it's encouraging the transition even, to a digital society and cracking down on tax evasion. But not everyone is happy with the move. And sure, why wouldn't they be happy with the move? Because this is the Orwellian state. It's coming to pass. This is what they warned us about, folks, and it's starting. It's starting,
it's happening. And if you have money, if you won money and it went into the bank and you try to take it out, chances are they'd probably try and stop you doing it. That's the way. I've heard this already from a friend of mine where her daughter had money in the bank and she wanted to take it out. And the chap, basically the bank manager, whoever it was actually trying to convince her that, no, don't take it out. And she had to demand that he give her the money. It was just ridiculous, honest to God. He was like a child with a social worker. You can't get it off him. Right, how's your week, Steve?
Yeah, my week's been fine. There is one thing that I want to mention, but I'm not going to mention it because I see you have it on your list as well. So when you talk about it on your week, then I will chirp in with what I need to say. It's securely in my back pocket.
Okay, right, okay.
Yeah, but what I will say is I'll just touch briefly on 3 little things. Sodium bicarb. I did see something, it could have been on the old anti-social media recently. I didn't read the article, but it did say that a spoonful of sodium bicarbonate digested or ingested every day has many benefits. I didn't read the whole article, so I'm not even going to make it up. But we've been saying this for a long time, that it is kind of an alkaline agent and it is beneficial to the body. So if you're not taking a spoonful every day, start taking a spoonful every day. If you are, well done. Chemtrails are also back. Alan and I we stood at Alan's, we stood in the garden last week and we were looking up at the sky discussing, isn't it amazing? We haven't seen any chemtrails in a while. But they're back, unfortunately.
Yeah,
they are back. I've seen them myself there, all over the place during the past week, and so yeah, again, like when you don't see them, you think maybe things are changing, but unfortunately they're back, so things aren't changing. And the only other thing I want to mention is like videos, and you often see, when we mentioned here before about we often shoot videos and put them up on YouTube. And Alan has mentioned that sometimes the figures get messed with, where you're looking at your thing, you're going, wow, no one's looking at that video. I don't get it. Well, I was actually sat in a car wash yesterday, in a car. So
okay.
that was a bonus. I was in a car, and I was just thinking, the little dash cam on the window was running, and I was just thinking, and I said it to my wife, the video of the car wash. If I was to upload that as it is, just a video of me sitting in a car wash, and put it up on YouTube and go, man sitting in car, having a car wash, it will probably get no hits or very few. But yeah, and I was just thinking, and I might even do this. I might do it. Put it up there and just title it "Naked Man Runs Through Car Wash."
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And then get people just to monetize the video, and I think everyone could do this. And then just wait till the end of the video, and people are waiting, watching for this naked man, and then at the end go, oh, by the way, there is no naked man.
Yeah, I think they call that clickbait.
Yeah.
Well, it's an experiment. You're trying it. It's an experiment.
Yeah. So, I might actually just upload it, just for the hell of it, just to see what happens. I'll upload it twice with 2 different titles and see which one gets more hits. So there we go. Right, anyway, so the other thing I want to talk about, I'll wait until your week. So how was your week?
How was my week? Right, well, very quickly, as I mentioned earlier, just the auction is at €125 at the moment. So we're going to run it till the end of the month. And if any of the bids come in higher than 125, then you'll have lunch with myself and Steve, and the money raised goes to the Mead Food Bank in Trim, and also we'll divide it between Trim and another food bank that we have in mind. So it's going to a good cause, folks, and you can have a meal with myself and Steve, and you'll have our undivided attention for them couple of hours. Oh, how long it takes to have a burger and chips. No, we'll do it. We'll have a proper meal. And the other thing that's on the list, obviously, you can't get away from this bloody thing. The royal wedding that was on yesterday.
There it is.
There it is. Okay, so will I read my bit first?
Yes,
I'll read my bit first. Okay. Okay, well, it's good to see that the old the taxpayer and the peasants are paying for the old wedding, and they're lining up in their droves to watch the royal people coming in, getting married, Harry and his bride, and they're laughing all the way to the bank, and oh my God, you are prepared, and unbelievable, and there they are waving their flags, and they don't see it, and the street parties and everything else. Unbelievable, I have to say. Now, okay, I can understand, people, that because the royalists are into all of that, and that's fine, and they're waving the flags. But, oh my God, I don't know whether you heard about this, but apparently we have a radio TV show over here on TV3 in the morning, and the 3 TV presenters, would you believe, dressed up in their best clothes, as if they were going to a wedding, because the wedding was on, and we were in Ireland, and they weren't going to a wedding. Talk about, I don't know what to say. They dressed up in their best clothes as if they were going to a wedding, but they're not going to a wedding. Talk about your slave masters and everything else. There you go. That's it. Go on, Chuckus. What you
right? Okay. Well, I've printed out a picture here, and it's a picture of the bride and groom. Obviously, this is before the wedding, and it said on it, and this was a post going around the anti-social media, Facebook. And it said, the biggest scroungers in the UK are this pair and the rest of that royal lot, while folk in the UK queue up at food banks and homeless kids are having their school meals taken from them. The public purse is paying for this pair's wedding 40 million, 56,000 for a cake and 300,000 for a dress. Shame on you, Britain. I'm sure we've all seen it. It's going around anti-social media. So anyway, there was... speaking of anti-social media, I was on Facebook there last night, and a lady that I know, she had a posting saying that she'd missed, she was working during the morning, so she didn't see the festivities. So what she did was, I think she had it recorded, and she watched it later on, and she said she was dying to, that people put everything on Facebook, that she was dying to watch it. So I just made a comment. It was a one-line, half-a-line comment, just saying, all paid for by the taxpayer. LOL.
Yeah.
I was lambasted after that, I swear to God. So yeah, she felt the need to let me know. And again, I don't know.
Was she Irish?
Yes.
Oh my, that's even worse.
Yes, I know. Now I don't know exactly who paid what and what was paid and who, what everything cost, but she let me know this information. I'm just going to read it out here now, and it's in nice big writing, or big text, as you can see. Makes it easier for me. And this is about Prince Harry, and they're saying he volunteered for 2 tours of Afghanistan. He set up Invictus Games, helping wounded service personnel, numerous unpaid charity volunteer appointments all over the world. It said his family brings in 400 million in a year in private revenue that under the Sovereign Act of 2011, the government keeps 360 million of it. It says here the family brings in 1.8 billion per year in tourism. The country is better off by 2.1 billion a year. And it says, remind me how the wedding is a waste of taxpayers' money. The wedding is paid for by the royal heritage and private funding, not the taxpayer, and that includes her dress. The taxpayer will pay for the public security, not the private security, the same way the taxpayer pays for public security at football matches, etc. Don't be a zombie and believe everything you see and read on the internet. Do a little research before sharing propaganda. Like it or not, the royal family is a British tradition and icon. Let's not forget that most of the twats complain about spending taxpayers' money are the ones who sit and sign for that money every Wednesday, or daft liberals who haven't got a clue about reality.
Okay. And
thoughts, please.
Okay. Well, I question the actual the cost of where the money comes from, because they have a great way of telling you that it's coming from one hand, but actually it's coming from another hand.
Yes, slight hand, yeah.
And there's all the kind of the hidden money that's coming in from the duchy, and all that is all this food and gardens and organic food and certain things going on there. They're on a stroke, along the line, getting money in other ways as well. Plus, there's certain questions that have to be asked about where did them 10 children disappear in 1967 in Canada, and what about that dead body that was found in I think it was Balmoral in the land. If somebody found a dead body in your back garden, you'd be hauled over the coals and you'd be questioned and interrogated. But that didn't happen to Queen. They just took the body away and that was it. And there's a hell of a lot of other questions as well to go on to talk about and mention. So, it's not as squeaky clean as we all believe, or some people believe, like this lady. Anyway, we're going to bring in our guest, and we're going to have a chat with Mary Helen and find out what she's been up to, what's the news, what's been happening, and any information that she can give us. But before we do that, Steve's going to give us a quick read of Mary Helen's bio.
I won't read it too quickly, else you wouldn't be able to understand it. Anyway, Mary Helen Hensley, she's a published author with Simon Schuster and also with Book Hub Publishing. Wit, wisdom and wow are synonymous with Mary Helen Hensley. Her marriage of no-holds-barred humour and honesty with integrity and compassion makes her one of Ireland's most sought-after metaphysical healers and synergistic speakers. With a Bachelor of Arts in Communication and Graphic Design, Mary Helen went on to receive a Doctorate of Chiropractic in America and practiced in Ireland from 1999 until 2012. She has facilitated the healing process for countless individuals. Following a near-death experience in 1991, Mary Helen began to realise that her previous skills of communicating with those in spirit had become so much more. A series of incredible serendipitous events led to her developing her newfound ability to facilitate the healing process. Overnight, she found herself able to read the ethereal field of an individual, linking her to that person's history, gaining insights into how past experiences were creating a person's present reality regarding their physical, emotional and spiritual health. And you can actually find more information on Mary Helen's website, which is maryhelenhensley.com.
Brilliant stuff. Good evening, Mary Helen. How are you doing?
Hey guys, how are you?
Not too bad. Thanks for coming on and joining us and have a chat with us so we can catch up on what's been going on.
I would have come on to hear that bio read in that accent.
Oh, there you go. There you go, Steve.
I would have preferred if you had read it yourself.
Yeah.
I'm 20 years living here and it still gets me.
Oh, that's good. Oh, that's good. That's good. Listen, the last time you were on the show, we did a 20-minute slot with you. We were doing the Open Mind conference, and we had all the speakers on before the conference, and you were one of the speakers that came on, and we did say to you that we're going to get you on for part 2. We do a full show with you, and you kindly said you'd come on, and you'd have a chat to us and let us know, what's been going on, what's been happening. So, I'm not too sure where we can start in subject matters, but I did say to you before we went live, there's an awful lot of talk about, because I know there's a spiritual background with you as well, and you do healing and stuff like that. So, but there's an awful lot of talk of the 3 things out there is 1, this new earth, Number 2, the so-called event. And 3, the energies apparently hitting the planet and causing certain people to feel unwell or not, they've been ill or they're not sleeping or they've got headaches and all this kind of stuff. And I'd just like to get your take on it and, find out what your experiences are, what you've come across, if you have heard anything about these at all.
Oh, I have indeed. And, I think it's a wonderful opportunity for the entire population to experience what it feels like to be in menopause. And, that's a joke.
No, that's all. I know what you mean.
I hear a lot about this all the time, and I have people who come to me, with questions about this type of thing. And the event, my God, there have been that many. Look, I'm 49, and I've been in the world of metaphysics more or less, over half of my life. Knowingly, the first half of it, I was in it, but not really that aware of what I was doing. And I have to say, in all of that time, I have heard more events, no different than yourselves. There was, in the 80s there was something in the 90s, and of course the huge, massive build up to 2012. And there's always the event, no differently than there's always been, for as long as I can remember, and since the dawn of time, there have been the end timers, there have been the ones who are waiting for the turn of somebody or something. There's always going to be, amongst the population, those who are waiting for an event. And as far as I can see, the event's happening all the time. That's not something that we have to sit around and wait for. As far as the way that, especially with the internet now, we love to cause the, whether it's scaremongering or just the excitement or the general buzz of, it's going to happen on this day, and then that day passes, and then it's going to be the next one. As we were talking about before, Alan, about the, it's not this November, it'll be next November, or if it's not this September, it'll be next April. There's always a lot of that within this industry, within this field of study. The reality of it is that we've got stuff happening all the time. We're constantly discovering and rediscovering. People's perceptions of the world that we live in are changing. So the conscious evolution of people, that conscious energy and forward momentum, it waxes and wanes, and so does the events that surround it. So the world and how the energies of the world affect us in our personal lives in a microcosmic way, and then, in a global scale in a macrocosmic way. It all depends on where the global consciousness is at the moment. I very much so firmly believe that this is a holographic world. I believe that it is highly respondent and programmed that way to react to our feelings, our commitments, our lack of commitments, our lack of action, our total action, and therefore it is a constantly fluctuating, waxing and waning world. And so I think it's more of the sensationalism and, those kind of tactics that love to talk about this new energy, this new earth, look, it's been inventing and reinventing itself as long as it's been around. And so it will continue until the end of time. That's my take on it anyway.
Okay. And, what about the New Earth? Have you heard about the New Earth?
Are you talking about as far as the rise in consciousness, the evolution to where human beings are moving to a crystalline structure, where tell me what you're
basically they talk about the rise in consciousness, but also just talk about this so-called New Earth. We had a guest on there recently whose son had committed suicide, and she was obviously claimed that she spoke to her son, that he would give her downloads, and he was talking to her through these downloads, and he was telling her about the New Earth and that this change is going to be taking place soon. It's always soon. It's always soon. I've heard this word soon for the last 5 bloody years. It's always soon. And but anyway,
it's been coming back for 2,000 years, so it's all relative, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And talk about putting out the bad vibes there when people talk about the Christians talk about the rapture. I mean, that's the kind of bad thing. I don't know why they're hoping that the rapture is going to happen. Maybe they feel that because they're going to be saved, that the rapture won't affect them. But again, that's just a Christian thing in the Bible. But yeah, the new earth is supposed to be, a place that has high vibration. As to how it works and where are we supposed to get there, do we transition over there, or is purely this energy that's coming down the pipeline, is it purely just a awakened consciousness on the planet? And people who don't vibrate on the same frequency as ourselves, well, they'll probably just disappear. We won't see them, and it could be just a completely different vibration, because again, there's talk about the 4D and the 5D. And people are saying there's glitches in the matrix and things are happening as well, and they're seeing certain things. And I've seen a few things on YouTube which you definitely would say question, and you go, oh, okay, that's pretty strange, that something like that happening. So there's obviously people are experiencing something anyway. As to how the new earth applies to that, I don't know.
But I think people have been experiencing things all along. It's just now with mass communication, we have instant access to what other people have been seeing, feeling, hearing all along. It's kind of like, I come from a very small hometown, and I said to my mother when I wrote my first book, I said, you just watch, Mom, people are going to start coming out of the closet. And so when I wrote that book, and suddenly that book was, in bookshelves and bookstores and online and all this, and people were starting to read this, and they're like, oh, isn't that's little Mary Helen from down the block. And they were like, oh, well, that happened in my house too, and blah, 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 blah. And once somebody let the cat out of the bag, and once somebody made it okay to be different, everybody had the stories. It's not that suddenly everybody awakened to this new consciousness of having, paranormal activity in their houses, or having these experiences, or these weird encounters with that which we can't explain. It was happening all along, but nobody was really talking about it, or they only talked about it amongst themselves or within their families. And so I said to my mom, you just watch. And sure enough, everybody started talking about it. And I think it's like that across the board. It's, what you just described there to me sounds more like, it's just like religion wrapped up in a different set of clothing.
Well, we have to be careful of the kind of new age woo-woo stuff, because there is plenty of that out there, and we need to kind of be logical and deal with what we can deal with. Now, people are obviously experiencing certain symptoms and certain things, and that's fine. I can kind of relate to that, because I know last year I was definitely feeling certain energies that I'd never experienced before, and I think, Steve, you had as well a period of time you had gone through, felt one or two things as well. So, yeah.
But you can
talk. No, I'm just trying to get Steve to talk. You can talk. You can say.
I can't multitask. I cannot type and talk.
He's waiting for the rapture. You have to remember, as you personally evolve, and you begin to experience these things. It's like when somebody says, well, suddenly I'm feeling these weird energies, or I'm hearing these strange noises. Well, there's some people who've been feeling and hearing those things all of their lives. Mm. And as we move into our own evolution of a personal consciousness, maybe suddenly we become aware of the fact that, gosh, I'm laying in the bed and it feels like I'm vibrating, but I'm looking at my body and nothing's moving. My mother is a classic example of that. For the last, say, a good 5 to 10 years. She's 89 now. So for basically the brunt of her 80s, she's had this new awareness. And a lot of that came from the fact that my father was a minister. And, so our lives revolved around his ethos of what it meant to be a Southern Baptist Christian, in the Bible Belt of America. Mm. And while he wasn't a fire and brimstone kind of guy, he was very devout in his spirituality within the confines of Christianity. Mm. And my mom was his wingman. 60 years they were married. And so she was there. But when my father passed, and all of a sudden my mom was free to talk about and feel the things that I'd been talking about and feeling my entire life, because a lot of the same gifts that I have experienced as far as the healing goes, her father, who was a surgeon from Kentucky, he had the same stuff. But we didn't like to talk about that because it didn't quite fit in the box. And so we didn't really speak about that when Dad was around. And so suddenly my mother is in bed and she's like, she'll get up and, if I'm home visiting, she's like, do you feel that? And I'm like, yes, Mom, I feel that. And she's like, oh my gosh, what is that? And I'm like, Mom, I'm in my childhood bedroom. I've been feeling that. That's what I was telling you guys about all along. She's like, I feel it now. And she sees things. She hears things. So, what happened? Did mom suddenly get, the ascension symptoms? Or did mom's consciousness change and she became aware to what had been around her all along? So, when I look at this idea of the new earth and the way things like this are being sold within some of the new age movements, higher vibration, this and that, and it all sounds very separatist to me, if you ask me. And no different than that concept of those who get, those who pass the bar get to heaven and those who didn't go to hell. It's just, now we just call it vibration or higher consciousness. I mean, I don't see where it's an awful lot different, to be honest. And I'm looking at what we tend to do as human beings, coming from millennia of religious dogma, from the idea of moving from a society of people who were devoutly into animism, where they believed that spirit was in every living thing and even inanimate objects. And then we moved to this idea where we created that separation, and then it was very patriarchal. It was man and son, man and father, father and son, and, did everything we could to push the divine feminine out. And now we see this huge swing back into inclusiveness of the divine feminine and having to clean up some of the mess the patriarchy made and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what's interesting that we do as human beings? When people talk about the earth and this new earth, or, you ask any Miss America pageant or contestant, what do you want? And they all say, world peace. I want world peace, And I'm like, man, I don't think people really get it, because it would be the same if I've got 2 kids. If you guys have kids and the day comes when they want to go off to college, and let's say they want to go to a cooking school, they want to become a chef. And I go and I put my child into that cooking school, and they go and they get there and they're like, yeah, you know what? This isn't what I really want. And so they call home and they're like, Mom, this isn't what I want. Dad, this isn't what I want. And the same logic would be if I went and I tried to change the nature of that school, rather than taking my child, having a chat about who and what they really are, what do they really want from life, whether it's college or going out into the working world or doing whatever. But we have this incessant need to change the world that we're in. And I think we've missed kind of the big picture that this world is perfectly perfect the way it is. For all of its nastiness and for all of its racism and for all of its horror and for all of its beauty and for all of the absolute love and joy that it has to offer, we spend so much time trying to change the fact that this world is a perfect dichotomy. And we don't like that because we think that we have got the short end of the stick because we have to suffer sometimes. And it's very interesting because it's like we've been pushed to believe that unless we have the fairy tale, unless we never hurt, unless we don't have to go through the growth process by struggling or by feeling pain or by having our feelings hurt, then this place isn't perfect and we need to change that schoolhouse. So rather than taking my kid out of cooking school and putting him in a school that's more appropriate, we think we need to go in and change the cooking school.
Well, we know that the education system definitely needs to be changed. That's for sure. I think we can all agree on that. With the content that they teach the kids today, it's irrelevant, really. I mean, they're not teaching them, and that's purposely done, because ignorant people are much easier to control and manipulate. If they don't have the knowledge of how the system works. Now, the good news is there are a lot of positive changes going on at the moment. When you deal with your clients, so you're dealing with clients or, the work that you do, have you heard anything coming down the line as to things that are going on globally or any news from that end that you can tell us about?
You mean as far as what? As new work available? As new...
Well, when you're speaking to your clients or dealing with clients, and obviously you probably do your own research on what's going on globally, how do you see things going at the moment? I mean, can you stand back? Do you often stand back, look at the planet, and then just kind of get your eye view of what's happening on the planet?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I don't think we would be here if any of us had all the answers. And I think that's the very reason that we choose to come into the dichotomy that I was speaking about. Mm-hmm. It was interesting listening to that first 15, 20 minutes of you guys, and it was highly entertaining. And it's, all we are is a bunch of people walking around with a bunch of opinions based on whatever experiences that we've had. And, and each of us is entitled to his or her own. It's kind of like, when you were talking about the Syrian issue. I just got my citizenship here in Ireland 2 years ago, or sorry, last year, 2 years ago maybe. And as I sat in the hall in Dublin getting my citizenship, the man who sat next to me squeezing my hand was a Syrian refugee who had escaped 4 years prior when America was bombing the village that he and his family lived in. And he got out because only he could get out in order to come and find a place where he could obtain citizenship in order to hopefully go back and find his family alive and get them out of that place. And I tell you what, to hear that story holding that man's hand while receiving my Irish citizenship was absolutely humbling and mind-boggling, because I sat there, an American who chose to come and follow my dreams in this country, and I have no more right to that citizenship than he did. And it's very easy because he's currently in refugee status, and maybe I'm a member of the tax-paying community at this moment, because that happens to be my story, and refugee happens to be his story at this time. And it's interesting how easy it is to talk about what's going on, in our own back garden. Well, again, that's how we see it's not acknowledging that dichotomy. We'll clean up your own backyard first. That's not going to happen, guys. That's not the way this place is set up. You are not ever going to find a time where you have a perfect Ireland, where you have a perfect America, because that is not what the Earth experience is about. And so it's, in my opinion, about your responses. It's about how you choose to respond. That's what the opportunity is given to you for. And some people are very focused on that issue, the homelessness issue, the refugees who are in trouble type issue. Other people are focused on the environment. Other people are focused on health and well-being. And I don't think it's as simple as saying, well, we need to clean up our own mess before we start cleaning up anybody else's. I mean, imagine if people had said that before the Irish populated the four corners of the earth when they were in trouble. It's not as easy as that.
Oh no,
it's
listen.
Personal reaction.
Yeah, we know it's very deep, and it's not going to happen because of the people that we have. Well, the people that create the problem are not the people that will solve the problem. And as I say, I sympathise with the people who are, through no fault of their own, being bombed out of their own, and they become refugees, and they come over here, and that's fine. But what I'm trying to point out is that we have an issue that needs to be addressed, and that issue could be resolved. And this rabbit hole goes very deep. This is not just, looking at the top layer, which is what we're doing regarding the homeless and the Syrian. That's just the top layer. It's how deep this rabbit hole goes with the whole control of the cabal and the factions and the hundreds of years that this system has been put in place, and the control of the population and the control of the system. That's the problem. That all has to be changed. Well, the whole homeless crisis and the issue, that's nothing. That's the top layer of the cake. We have to get right down to the control mechanism. Who's controlling it from the top? And all that has to be changed, because when that's changed, then everything else is going to be changed. But we can all do our bit to make that happen. We can all make a change. But people have to wake up to what's going on for us. They have to. We always say knowledge gives you choice, ignorance doesn't. And if people are ignorant to what's going on, then obviously, they won't be able to make any changes because they don't know what's going on. They actually believe what they're hearing on the news from the politicians and from the news outlets, the mainstream media. And what we're trying to do is trying to wake them up to say, look, this is what's going on. And we need to change the system. Like DDI is a party that, I'm not saying that I'm a DDI person, but what their process of representative democracy is, quite appropriate, because at least it gives the people a fighting chance. Whether we get it in or not is one thing, but if we can get it in and it means that people can call referendums and have recall, it's a step in the right direction, but it's going to be an uphill struggle, because anything that takes away the power from the people at the top is going to be challenged.
Yeah, and it's all about baby steps. You guys were talking about the royal wedding, and certain people's opinions about the atrocity that it was, and all. But yet, it's no different than when Obama became president in America, and it wasn't about Obama and what Obama was going to do. It was a baby step in the right direction, as far as it was a major coup for the African American population, and I think it was a wonderful thing. Yesterday, you've got a girl who's of a mixed cultural background who, for the first time, has now infiltrated, whatever you want to call it, this royal family. And you had a service that, if you watched it, was completely different than anything that you would have ever seen in the past in a royal wedding. Who funded it? Who did this and that? We have opinions about that. We have, good information on some levels and scatty information on others. What I'm looking at more is the big picture of the fact that, we're talking about making those small changes. And if you look at her history, and if you look at what she personally stands for, it's a big deal that she got into that family. And, I saw a meme earlier that, was the Queen kind of looking out from under her hat, and there was kind of a shady image of Meghan Markle in her wedding dress in front of her, and, and it said at the bottom, "Shoot, I've already used the car accident idea."
Yeah, I've seen that.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
But it's just, we could pick apart every negative aspect of it. We could pick apart every negative aspect of the government. That's not where the changes are going to happen. The changes have got to come from the likes of what you're doing and the information that you're sharing with people. And the people have to change. Because government can come and go. Governments can be, you can have good guys, bad guys, in between, indifferent. It's what the people are willing to do. And a classic example of that, something popped up on my Facebook memories today, about how much I was fighting for the non-fluoridation in Ireland, which is a subject that's very near and dear to me. And trying to highlight and bring, to anybody who would listen. My God, I was on every radio show, TV, everything. I mean, we went for the Taoiseach's throat on it, because we were actually on the mains water supply at the time before we switched over to well water. And we were talking about the fact that in our area where we live, the water had been contaminated for a period of over 2 years with cryptosporidium. And after the constant exposure to that, with unbeknownst to us, my daughter ended up contracting meningitis. And they determined in the hospital definitively that the gut weakness from the cryptosporidium was actually what triggered the meningitis. And I was looking at that when it popped up, and there was a picture of my little girl. She was 7 or 8 at the time, standing there with a bottle of our tap water that she had gotten from our own sink. And Inda Kenny was coming through town, and that little child marched right up to him and handed the bottle to him. And she said, "I dare you to drink this." And he was like, I don't know if somebody tipped him off that we were coming or whatever, but we were in the paper and on the news and all this kind of crap. And he looked at her, and I said to him straight out, this is a result of a mainstream water supply that has not been addressed. And, she's asking you to drink this because this is the same water that made her sick. And he looked at the child and he said, "Well, when you have a shower, you shouldn't keep your mouth open." And I just went, wow. He said it with all the cameras rolling and everything, and it was just nuts. So I'm like, all right, we were doing our piece, and there was my daughter, and she was learning to, go and campaign about things that matter and how important it is to have a clean water supply. And especially at the time when they were talking about charging for the water, fair enough, but not water that's killing you. The kid nearly died. Yeah. And I get back, and it was so interesting. I was playing music down in my local village only a few days later. And not one, but several people came up to me and said, I cannot believe that you would have gone and painted our village in such a bad light. And I said, excuse me? And they said, I was like, what are you talking about? And they were like, pointing out that our water is bad here. And that I said, I pardon your, are you kidding me? Like, my child almost died. And so in that moment, you don't blame a government for that. That's the people. That's the individual. Those are the people who couldn't be bothered to get up and go and do something because it wasn't happening on their doorstep.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the I'm okay, Jack attitude, and that's a major issue over here in Ireland. The I'm okay, Jack, plus the begrudgery as well. I mean, if that was an Olympic sport, as we say, that Ireland would win every year, and this is the change that we need to that needs to take place in Ireland. The people need to wake up. Unfortunately, it might get to a stage that it might be too late for some people, and it's sad. That's the way it is, but we will soldier on anyway and try and wake up as many people as we can. Steve, you've got questions there you want to ask Mary?
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions actually.
Hi, Steve.
Hello, Mary. Helen Hensley. How are you?
Back from the rapture.
Yeah. It wasn't what I was expecting, so I came back early. I didn't wait for the end of it. I think everyone dies in the end. Anyway, where we spoke earlier of yes. Anyway, Graham has a question. Does Mary Helen subscribe to spiritual entropy, i.e., everything that is created must be destroyed for rebirth to occur?
Ooh, interesting.
You can phone a friend now if you want.
No, I'm just thinking. Does everything have to be destroyed in order to be reborn? No, I don't think so, because, that's multi-layered, because, can a mindset or a system of belief be shattered or brought to its knees in order for a person to then be reborn and grow again within the same body? So I could still be me and still live in the same house and still wear the same meat suit, without having to go through a physical death. Like in my own personal experience, I did go through the physical death temporarily. When I was in a car accident in 1991 and, broke my neck and had the whole near-death experience. And so temporarily for a period of physically a few minutes, eternally it seemed forever. So I did go through a physical death in order to have that kind of awakening. But I've spent the rest of my life since that time teaching people that you don't actually have to physically die to have that same kind of revelation. I have noticed across the board that there have been an awful lot of people who do the same type of work that I do. And there seems to always be a common denominator. There was always a head injury. There was always some bang to the head. And that leads me to believe, after many, many, many years of this, that something happens that changes the constitution, I think, of the pineal gland. It shakes the dew off it, knocks the calcification off. It's something about, it's like the jukebox that doesn't work and you go over and give it a swift kick and it starts playing Happy Days. There's something about that connection to the pineal gland, and we have, I have since discovered myself, I'm sure that there were people leading back to Einstein and Tesla who knew that frequency would be able to accomplish the same thing. I've spent this lifetime rediscovering that. So no, I don't think there has to be a physical death for that kind of rebirth, and especially now that I work, solely in frequency and healing. I'm witnessing on a day-to-day basis where sometimes people come in and they are so full. They are so full of their life experiences. They are so overwhelmed. They are so jaded, bitter, you name it, whatever. And you could talk until the cows come home and you could never convince them that love wins. But what I have discovered is that you can't ignore or not hear frequency, because we are energetic beings. We talk about this evolution to a crystalline structure. It's already there. This physical structure that we carry is just simply one projection, one aspect. The crystalline structure that we are is already in place. I believe personally that that's the blueprint where things are carried out before they do manifest into the physical. So I know that by using frequency in order to speak to someone else, that you can actually bypass all of their BS. That you can bypass all of that, and that they can have the same type of awakening that I've experienced with every other person I've worked with who's had the whole near-death phenomenon, or who's gone through a death and rebirth scenario. I've seen the betrayal, the crucifixion, and the resurrection metaphorically take place in many, many lives without having to go through the actual destruction of the physical component of the body. For some people, there's a destruction in the mindset. For some people, there's a destruction in the physical body. But I don't think either one is absolutely necessary to have that type of rebirth scenario. So, Graham, I hope that answers your question.
I think it does, and thanks very much. You did say about your near-death experience, and I did read it in the bio because it is part of the information, the about you on the website, and it does say that after your near-death experience, overnight you found yourself able to read the ethereal field of an individual, linking to the person's history, gaining insights into into their past experiences. How do you do that? I'm fascinated by this, and I'll tell you why, because there's a guy, and I watched him several times on YouTube, and his name is Steve, and I can't remember the guy's second name, but he has this thing, and it's a radio, and it's one of these special radios, and I think he bought it from America somewhere, and it's called an ethereal radio. And basically what it does is he puts it on and he just asks questions. Is there anybody there? And it's like this radio. It scans the whole ether, if you like, in all different frequencies, and it pulls words, and these words come back and they answer them. Is that something that you do, or is that completely different?
Can I please share with you one of the funniest things that has ever happened to me regarding that exact thing that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, so I work in the summers. I'm in Los Angeles, and I do a lot of work out there. And one of my favorite places, and because my 89-year-old mother loves to come out with me, she's a huge fan of the Queen Mary. So that's the Gigantics, the Queen Mary, the ship.
Yeah.
It's been docked since the 60s, and they turned it into a floating hotel. And it's its original form, and it's still very Art Deco, and all the cabins are original. It's just quite the experience, but it's also meant to be one of the most haunted locations in America. And so you'd have all sorts of people who come out and do paranormal tours, and they have a ghost tour that they run. And so I happened to be at a conference. I was a speaker at a conference on board the ship once. And so they had organized this kind of private group tour for people who had been part of the conference. And so there was this guy who came along, and he had that little box, that little radio, and all the equipment. I mean, it looked like something off Scooby-Doo. He had the little thing, the cords and all. And he was the sweetest guy. I mean, he really was such a nice guy. And so the Queen Mary has just so many stories. There were different people who, died on the ship. There was a little girl who drowned in the pool, and there was a maintenance man who during a routine fire drill, the doors would electronically close, and he got severed in two. And these things really happened. So of course they have made huge stories of the ghostly appearances. And I have to say, I saw Winston Churchill was on board, and he had a suite there. And there's just all sorts. And I've seen some bizarre stuff on there. But this guy comes along, and he's got his equipment and with our little group, and so we're going around down into the bowels of the ship and the pipes and down in the engine room, which is meant to be one of the most haunted. And in fact, a friend who was with me caught one of the most fascinating photographs I have ever seen, because as clear as day, you could see the maintenance man standing there with the little girl with her big red bow in her hair. And I was like, Jesus Christ, either they have made a really incredible holographic image, but it wasn't something that you could see, let's say, with the naked eye. It was a phenomenal photograph. But this guy's going around with this little box, this little radio, the EMF, whatever you call it. It looked like a Geiger counter. And he's like, hello, listen, we love you. we're here. And if any of you want to go back into the light, we're here to help. I mean, I have that schoolgirl mentality, where I need to be sat in the back of the classroom or the back of the church, because if somebody does something, I'm going to break out, right? And I was just dying. I was trying so hard not to be disrespectful because it was so funny. He was in all sincerity, and his little box is going, and there's little, was that a yes? Was that a no? And the little box is talking, and so he'd been on and on and on. Are you there? If you need our help, let us know. We love you. Go into the light. Please go into the light. And next thing, I turned around and I said, did that just say what I think it did? And he's standing there with his jaw hanging open, and I was just buckled in two. And he had gone on, and he was like, have you got anything to say to me? And I swear, as I'm sitting here talking to you, it goes, "Fuck you." But it didn't say "fuck you." I just won't say it.
Yeah.
I'm a lady. I nearly expired on the spot. And I'm like one of the keynote speakers, and I'm all into this and everything. Well, they had to cart me off in a wheelbarrow. I was finished. And he was so upset, because you couldn't make this up. It is truly to this day one of the funniest things. Are you there? Fuck you. Oh my God. Anyway, so no, for me it doesn't work quite like that. I see people, I see images, I hear things, I see them in my mind's eye, I see them in my real eye. And it's like watching a movie. So oftentimes when I'm working on somebody, if somebody happens to appear, they might appear standing over them, next to them. Oftentimes it would be like, if I asked you to close your eyes right now and visualize a 99. Visualize that cone. See the ice cream. See the chocolate flake in it.
Yeah.
You could very accurately close your eyes and give me a perfect mental image of what the 99 looks like. Oftentimes, that's what a dead person will look like when they appear and when they speak. And so it's a very audible, very clear way of speaking. So, yeah, that's kind of part of what I can do. That part, though, I've been able to do since I was very small. So that I had before the accident took place. And people are like, oh, my God, isn't that so weird? Well, for me, I don't know any different. So if I suddenly couldn't do it, it would be really weird. It's just a normal part of me, of who I am.
So just talking to Steve, I would just want to touch base. Are you talking about EVP, the electronic voice phenomenon, where they have an ovulus device?
Yeah.
Okay, because the Paranormal Survivor programs and all that, they use all this technology to do EVPs, It's interesting that when they do it and a voice does come back, that there seems to be some kind of intelligence behind it. It would not just a random word, because they'll ask a various question and actually get an answer back. Maybe that chap was just having a bad night. I don't know. You have more questions there from Eric?
Yeah, I'm still visualising the 99 actually.
I'll have one of them, thanks.
Yeah, can I have syrup and sprinkles? When you do it, Mary, I mean, when you actually, do you have to be with someone for this to take place for you to be able to see and hear? I mean, like, if you closed your eyes, could you see someone here with us?
Yeah, if there was someone there with you. It's all about what's happening with the individual. I mean, there are things floating around and walking around and all the time. And, that's inevitably, people will do that to me. It doesn't matter if I'm in the grocery store or at a party or whatever. What's around me? Who's around me right now? And I'm like, really? It's, we've all got those connections and individuals around us at various times. And depending on what's going on in our lives, those energies can be much stronger, depending on when the individual passed. Sometimes when somebody is recently deceased, they're going through what I call a debriefing period, where they're kind of shaking off the whole trauma of being in a human body for X number of years. And just getting reacquainted with that frequency of love and of oneness and of that space that we come from. And so they're not contactable. It's like, you try to reach out and you get an answering machine. Others are just unexpected ones that come in. Well, hang on a second. I was looking for her grandmother, not the old dirty man down the road. And then he might turn up. It all depends on what's happening in the individual's life at that moment. And it's not something, I don't ever try to do it on demand. It's just, such a natural process. And oftentimes, you'll get somewhere and like somebody's like, okay, do it now, right now. Like, it's not a parlor trick. It's something that is deeply, it's funny, as you saw that example. It's funny. It can be very traumatic. It can be very sad. It can be extremely revealing. And it can be ultimately a life-changing experience for someone, because suddenly they realize that an individual is there with them, giving information through me, that gives them that peace, that although they maybe wanted to believe with all their hearts that their loved one is okay, when they hear from them in that way, then they kind of know. As I have matured, as I have been doing this for many, many years now, if you were to ask me what I actually think is happening, I believe, because of the nature of the way things happen with me, and I think other people that have some of these abilities might tend to agree, we hear of the Akashic records.
Yeah.
We hear of this what I would call like the World Wide Web of information, but on an etheric level. For whatever reason, whether it was smashing my head through a window and breaking my neck, and having that near-death experience, whether that's what did it, or whether it was already there, and the fact that accident then altered the path of my life and my focus and my direction, whether that's what woke it up, I have this feeling that what's been happening all along is that because of the nature of the way I'm able to use that, whether it's, seeing an event before it takes place, so you're talking about future events, or going into somebody's past life experience, which, we try to make it simple for people who are new to the concept and speak of it in the linear format, which isn't actually how it happens at all. I believe it's, in a book that I just finished writing, I try to describe it like a merry-go-round. You're the observer on the merry-go-round, and you could have your mom waving at you at north, and a dog wagging its tail in the east, and a man serving ice cream in the west, and, a fountain children are playing in the south, and that merry-go-round's going round and round. And just because I'm observing the mother as I pass north doesn't mean that the children aren't playing in the fountain just because I'm not in the south. And that I'm observing what's in front of me in that moment, but time is actually happening in a loop and concurrently. So we talk about past lives for people and put it in chronological order, because a lot of people, because they're new to the idea, their brains would simply melt if they tried to think of it as in, sorry, what are you saying? You're saying like the 13th century is happening right now as we speak? And I'm like, yeah. It's easier for people to digest the idea of time marching forward as opposed to time marching round and round. But I believe that this tapping in of that information, and maybe when you get into somebody, it's not that I'm so psychic. It's that something shifted in my capacity to be able to connect on a frequency that, let's say, the average person doesn't connect with. And I'm not going to say can't connect with, because I don't believe that. I believe everyone could if the circumstances were right. So it's kind of like when you see someone's dead, are you reading the Akashic record of what happened in that individual's life? Are you giving knowledge? Who knows? Now, oftentimes somebody's deceased would come through and they would tell me something that person didn't know, but then could later validate. So it's kind of what's actually happening there? Isn't that the fun part? It's the great unknown. But the longer I've been doing it, I really do think that there's something that it's like I had a blocked Wi-Fi signal when I came into the body, and something opened it up. And now my signal, I'm on full bars, and I'm able to connect to all aspects, whether it's in what we would consider future time, past time, present time. And it allows me access to the energy and information of people who have been here before, and events that have yet to take place.
Can you shut this off? I mean, is this something that's happening to you 24 hours a day, or can you actually shut it off?
Don't I wish? No. Okay. Yeah. It's tough sometimes. And I ask, like let's say if I'm completely super saturated, I will beg sometimes, please let me get a night's sleep, because a lot of stuff happens at nighttime to me as well. Particularly when we're dealing with, otherworldly individuals, will tend to make appearances, while others sleep. And I guess they know I'm not going to freak out, and that maybe my kids would if they woke up to go to the toilet and there they stood. I have seen stuff that would actually rock your socks. And, I sit here and tell you, do I believe it's true? I know it's true. And I'm as normal as they come when it comes to, I get up, take my kids to school in the morning, I make the lunches, I clean up the dog poo, I do the laundry, and then I go heal people and talk to dead, and I've seen beings that aren't from here. That is the nature of my life, and it doesn't switch off. It's always there, and it's very funny, even when I'm feeling really pitiful and I sound like such a whiner, and I'm like, I don't want this right now, I just need a night's sleep. That's when they hit me tenfold. And then I just start to laugh, because it's who I am.
So tell us, tell us, what are they telling you? I mean, they're appearing. So, but what's the information they're bringing you, or what are they telling you?
Well, that's what I write about. That's why I've decided to, and I think they picked me because I am so average. There's nothing super extraordinary about me as an individual. I'm a hard worker. I'm a go-getter. I have a 99.9% of the time I am in a happy mood. The other 0.1% is when I'm having a menopausal fit because of where I am in life. But other than that, I'm pretty average. And as far as, I live in a house and drive a car and have 2 kids, and, I'm a single mom, and I have a business, and I'm like a lot of other people. And I think part of what I was charged with during that accident, and when I say charged with, as in given the task, if I chose, and it was my choice to come back, I was not forced in any way, shape, or form. I chose to take on this role of trying to interpret to the best of my ability what happened to me during that time and what each and every one of us are capable of. And because yes, I'm a doctor, I have a doctorate in chiropractic, and, I have a double major in communications and graphic design from school. And, as far as that goes, I'm educated. But as my dad used to say, I'm not edumacated. Like, I wouldn't, how I talk to you right now is how I talk all the time. And I have absolutely no desire when speaking to or with somebody to ever try the power thing where I need to make myself feel better by talking over their head. And the greatest lesson that ever happened to me was a very important person in my life early on, who happened to be a doctor, used to talk to me in a way that it was so fascinating, and I was always like, wow. But I couldn't understand a damn word he said, because he used such a large vocabulary that I had yet to develop, that I was more wowed by him and what his ego presented than what he had to say. Mm-hmm. And if you asked me any of the important things that he had to say, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't connect with that. And so I actually believe that the reason I'm shown some of the things that I am and told the things that they say is because I'll be able to write about them and translate them in a way that the vast majority of the population is going to be able to understand, because we're speaking the same language. And,
okay.
So when you read one of my books, one of the things that I hear most often from people is that, I felt like you were talking right to me. It felt like we were having a conversation. And I tell you, you couldn't get a greater compliment as an author. And that's why I used it, in my bio it says synergistic speaker. And the reason we use the word synergistic is it is an equal exchange. It is an exchange of energy. So when I stand in front of an audience, when I do a radio interview, if I'm working one-to-one with an individual or I'm talking to 1,000 people, I'm going to have that same exchange of energy and information with somebody. And I really believe that's why I get the visits that I do and I get the information that I do, is because of being able to translate it in a palatable and digestible way. And it's not about ego. I've got no ego left. Dude, I've given birth to 2 children and I've had everything under the sun, and I have, had some very bizarre experiences in my life and some hard ones, and I have no ego left as far as, feeling better than anybody else, feeling like that I am over or above anybody. Do I have an ego? We all do. That's part of the human experience. But that need to feel better or better myself by making somebody feel lesser than, that's why I say all the time when people ask me, what do you actually do? I'm a window washer to the soul. All I'm doing is going and I'm wiping people's windows clean so they can see out for themselves.
Well, that's good. Well, listen, we have loads of questions and we want to get through them. So I'm going to go off to Steve. Steve's going to go through all the questions with you, and we'll get through them. Steve.
Steve.
Yes. We have a question from Dougie, and Dougie says, does your guest think the increase in light language writings is having an effect on the world? I know that light language writings, sounds and hand movements activate their own and other people's DNA. Junk DNA is dormant DNA, he says.
And sorry, what's the question again? Do I think it's what now?
He says, do you think that the increase in light language writings is having an effect on the world?
Absolutely. I mean, because light language is vibrational. And, we are learning now. And look, people who aren't taking courses or having to learn this elsewhere, that it's just coming to them intuitively, and that they're opening up and they're listening. That's all frequency. People are connecting with frequency. Is it changing the world? Absolutely. Because like I was talking about before, the Earth experience is that waxing and waning dichotomy of dark and light. And so does it change it for the better? Absolutely. Can we digress? You better believe it. Can we then rise again and change for the better? Yeah, it's like, they say 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Well, I'm like, how about 2 steps forward, 1 step back, then 2 steps forward, 1 step back? We're constantly changing. And that light language energy is a different frequency. It's connecting with a different aspect of who we already are. The junk DNA that we have that he's referring to, I happen to know that we've got 12 crystalline strands of DNA that people don't even realize that we have. And the communication that we do when we're dealing with light energy, is frequency based, and I'm doing a lot of work and research on that. I have a fantastic, friend and business cohort and partner. I call him the master mixer, who we're working on frequency projects as we speak, because like I said before, it's affecting people in such a way that even when they're so full, when life has gotten so hard, the mortgage, they couldn't meet the mortgage, they couldn't pay the bills, the kids are into this and that, and they're so full, you can always reach people through the language of light. You can always reach people through frequency. So you could have someone who's so ill that they can't even speak anymore. They can't even communicate in the way that we know. And you can totally change their countenance through frequency and light. And that's all they are. Frequency and light are just 2 different points on the same beam.
Okay. I don't know if I something actually seen on the internet yesterday. I don't know if it's real or genuine. It just came into my mind there, so I said I'll just ask. But it was supposedly a group of scientists, and they're doing an experiment. They had a woman in a room, and she was connected up to some equipment, and they were in another room, and they were kind of recording the whole thing. I don't know exactly what they were doing or what the equipment she was connected up to was, but at one point they claim that the soul. Her soul, they say her soul is not in the body, but it's tethered to the body. And with this equipment, they could see like a shape of a body, I suppose, for want of a better word, standing. It gradually appeared behind her, and then it started to move to the left and the right, and then it kind of wandered off to one side of the room and came back.
I wouldn't be so sure that was her soul.
No.
Yeah, I mean, because I see that image with people all the time. And sometimes, could that be an element of their own auric field or their own etherical body? Absolutely. But just as often, I could see somebody in that same image who's there with them, as in a guardian or, a loved one who is no longer in a physical form. Yeah, so it'd be kind of hard to call it one or the other, depending on. And, I'd love to have been present and heard what the communication from it was. Because it's, there are no absolutes in this. Can a soul be tethered to the body? You better believe it. That's how people astral project and can get back into a body. But a soul can also occupy the body. The soul is eternal, divine, omnipotent, endless, and without constraint. So, was it outside tethered to the body? Sure. Was it inside occupying the body? Sure. It can do all of those things. And it's amazing how a soul will stuff itself down and jump inside of the meat wagon for however long they sign up for and experience this world through 5 senses, for some 6, and I have seen people as they're passing, where the soul will lift and lower out of the body, particularly at peak times of pain. So if the soul doesn't feel it necessary to feel that horrendous pain of a heart attack when they're passing, or the chemo treatment, or the death rattle that's taking place when they're gasping for their last breath. I have so many times witnessed a soul lifting out of the body, allowing the peak time of pain to pass in the body and lowering back in. I've seen that so many times. So I don't think it would be as simple as saying that it happens one way or the other, because it can happen in so many ways.
Okay, and what about this is something we heard from a previous guest, and he said that if, let's say, as an example, if I were to take the life of another person, then obviously I'm committing a crime against that person, and their soul then, because I've kind of killed their meat suit, as you refer to it, then they can jump into my meat suit and they can inherit my body as well. Have you ever had that experience where somebody they may have the aura, but a walk-in? Yeah, have you experienced that?
I have, just recently actually, but it wasn't because someone took their life. And again, that's kind of that's a fun science fiction channel kind of scenario. To think of it that way. I don't think it's quite that simple. And that also jumps back into the judgment type of, oh, well, I'm taking over your body because you took mine. It's just not like that. I did, however, have somebody in just recently, within the last couple of weeks, who had been involved in a serious accident. And this was someone who was in their early 20s when this took place. And when they came to, because they were seemingly unscathed and this was a horrendous accident, when they came to, though, they came back with a completely different set of memories. But interesting, it wasn't like this individual's memories were completely erased from their own body. She was now carrying both. So something had jumped in at the time of the accident, so she was able to remember her own life, but all the memories of this energy's life that had entered the body at the time of the accident. I've seen some crazy stuff, let me tell you. So yeah, no, I've never, in all the years that I've been doing this, I've never seen somebody taking somebody's body, like, as in an eye for an eye type scenario, or tit for tat, no, I've not seen it like that, but absolutely, I've seen walk-in scenarios.
Okay.
And they're easy to spot for me because you always see a double heart chakra.
All right.
So yeah, you'll see an energy emanating from the heart, and it looks like a double chocolate layer cake.
We're back on the food again. Okay. Yeah, right. So 99s and double chocolate layer fudge cake. Anyway, Graham was wondering, do you know of psyche research work done by Professor Gary Schwartz on ESP and proof of life after death?
Gary Schwartz. He wrote a book. Oh man, what was the name of his book? I'm having one of those moments. Gary Schwartz. Is he from Chicago? Does Graham know?
Yeah, I think he's from the Chicago Schwartzes. I don't know. Yeah, Graham. Maybe Graham can let us know. But obviously, you're familiar. You say you're familiar of the work anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. I'm not sure if Graham has any a follow-up question to that. But okay, so we go on to actually.
Yeah, he did. I mean, he did a lot of. If it's the same guy that I'm thinking of, I actually quoted him in one of my early books. But I mean, like, there's a couple of Gary Schwartz that are doctors, and then there's this guy who did quite some detailed research on near-death experiences. So yes, I have. If it's him, I've heard of him. Yes.
Okay. A question from one of the listeners on People's Internet Radio. He said, "Hi, sorry for old topic, but I'm interested to know: does the etheric translator bust clouds/chemtrails every time you use it?"
The etheric translator?
Yeah.
Can't say that I know what that is. Do you know what that is?
I think it's a different thing. Sorry. No, it's a completely different thing. Sorry. I'll jump back onto PIR and just let them know that that's a completely different thing. Sorry, disregard that question.
It sounds really cool.
It is.
Well, we actually
trails. Can I get it on Amazon?
Yeah, no, we actually have one behind us. We actually have one here in the room with us. But that's all got to do with chemtrails and chem busting and changing the weather patterns. We actually have one in the office here. So, but that's a different story. Sorry, Steve.
Okay. Joan is wondering, after an abortion, does the baby soul go on and reborn go on to be reborn at some point?
Oh, Joan, I am so glad you asked that question. Especially in light of everything that's coming up with the vote on the 25th of May. And I actually made a video that I put out on Facebook addressing this exact topic. And here's something that's really interesting. So when I was 17, I was getting ready to graduate from high school, and I had my eye set on the college that I was going to, the college of my dreams. It happened to be the college that my sister went to, and I was going to study art just like my sister did, and I was really excited. And next thing, my father was the headmaster of my school, in addition to being a minister, and I get called down to my dad's office, and I got there and I could hear him talking to this guy, and I walked into his office and I was like, hello. And he's like, oh, hi, I want to meet so-and-so. And we used to coach football together years ago. And he's now the president of Coker College in South Carolina. And I was like, oh, well, nice to meet you. And Dad said, yeah, I want you to meet your latest prospective student. And I just went, what? And like my dad knew that I was going to James Madison University, and I was very excited about it. But obviously this man had come in and he was doing some recruiting, and Dad went way back. And so Dad offered me up as a sacrificial lamb. And I said, yeah, it's all right. I'll go down. But my one condition was that I be allowed to go by myself. Big girl decision. If you want me to go look at this college, I'm going on my own. And of course, being the preacher's daughter and 17, and I had never, under the very watchful eye of my parents, I had never done anything bad to speak of at that stage. And I get to this college, and let me tell you what, there were parties, and I got into this one party, and the last thing I remember was drinking vodka out of an IV bag. Somebody had on a roller pushing around, and, the straw at the end of it, and I was absolutely tanked. And I'd never been drunk before. And so there was this guy who was eyeing me up from across the room, and, I looked fantastic, only I was probably drooling at that stage just from being so wasted. And, he's like, come with me, I want to show you something. And it's like watching Scooby-Doo, and they're going into the basement, and you're like, don't go! Well, of course I went. And I get into this room, and next thing I realize, not only one, but two people are in the room, and every parent's worst nightmare. So I was raped that night, and I didn't know the two individuals who did it. And I ended up, long story short, becoming pregnant. So now I get back, and I am starting college, and where other people are choosing what they're going to major in, and they're having a great time, I'm deciding whether or not I can, at 17, just going on 18, become a mother? And does my life alter that way? And I just couldn't. It wasn't for me. It wasn't on my path. And so I made the decision to go and to have an abortion. And it was tough. It's not something you take lightly. But first of all, it was my very first sexual experience as well as my first drinking experience. And I had no idea who these people were. I had no idea. And so I made that choice, and it was a very difficult decision for me. But I did, and I knew that I had to choose me in that situation. So a few years go by, and it was interesting because my sister, who had then been married like 11 years, and she'd been trying so hard to have a child, and she gets pregnant, miscarries, gets pregnant, this holds, and she was so excited, and next thing finds out that the spinal cord of the child is on the outside, and it was a horrible situation. Not only was the child not going to make it, but she was going to be in physical danger. And so, of course, they're suggesting, we need to terminate this pregnancy. Can you imagine? You've been waiting all of those years. And one of the most beautiful things that I was able to do was walk up to her at that moment and describe to her exactly what was going to take place, and to hold her hand and to say, you are not alone. And everyone has different circumstances, and everybody has to face these things, and they have to do what sits right with them. But at that stage, I had already had this near-death experience in this car accident. And one of the most amazing things that happened was I was allowed to see, regardless of whether it was because of what I had chosen to do or what was going to be coming down the pike for my sister and many, many people like her. I got to actually see what happens. And the visual that they gave me was a car sitting outside on a frosty morning, and the engine is running, and the radio is on, and the smoke is coming out the pipe, and it looks, for all intents and purposes, to anybody walking by that car is alive, but there's no driver. And the way that they showed me with that visual was that this world and our lives are so dynamic that if a soul chooses to incarnate into the body, and it's only going to be there temporarily, whether it's 6 months in the womb, or whether it's going to be stillborn, or whether it's going to live for 3 months and then pass, or whether it's going to come into a scenario where the mother and father choose, or the mother on her own choose to have the pregnancy terminated, that the soul that would have been occupying that body is 100% fully aware and has the choice as to whether or not it's actually going to occupy the body. So in answer to Joan's question, it's not quite as simple as, does that soul reincarnate? Absolutely, it can reincarnate. But oftentimes what happens is when people are going through these harrowing decisions and having to make these choices, the souls are completely aware of what's going on. And if the soul doesn't deem it necessary to go into that growing fetus and experience what it's like to be 3 months in the womb, oftentimes what's happening is that person has grown a vehicle, but there's no driver. And so this comes as quite a shock to some people when they realize, when they want to use the murder scenario, and they want to use that would be the same as like if I took the car to the pound and had it crushed, but there was no driver inside saying that I murdered the car. You have the choice to do what's going to be best for your life path, and you do not have the power to remove the opportunity to live for another soul, because that soul knows before it incarnates if it's going into a body that's not going to live for a long length of time, or to one that's not ever even going to make it to fruition.
Okay. I'm sure there's lots more questions in relation to this, but does that mean, let's say for argument's sake, the soul decides not to incarnate into the body, and the parents decide, okay, we know the child is not going to live, but we're gonna continue on and have the child anyway. Would the child be stillborn, or is it possible for the child to be born, or to even to be moving about in the room without having a driver, as you put it? Or
absolutely, it's no differently than once I've turned the engine of the car off and the gas is fueling that car, then that car is going to look alive. It's a machine. It's operating. Of course, the heart is beating. The brain is active. The limbs are moving.
Can I just jump in there? This is what Thomas told me, with the difference between a synthetic and an organic. That they're born, but they've no soul. So that's the difference.
All right.
Sorry, very good.
That's all right. Yeah. So yeah.
So these synths, so when people say the person's a synth or a synthetic, they're born, but they don't have any soul. So they've no, like the car they have an engine and everything else, but there's no driver. As Mary says, quite, great description. So,
if they're born, if they actually make it through and they're alive, even if it's for 2 hours or 2 minutes, if they are alive, if the body is alive, then the soul has occupied. And the other thing that I was able to see is that oftentimes, depending on the number of times a soul is incarnated or what it's choosing to experience in this particular incarnation, you'll see them slide in at the last minute. You can have a body that's growing and developing in the womb, but let's say the soul doesn't need what's going on emotionally within the mother's state, because that we know scientifically that there is every reason to believe that the imprint made of the emotional state of the mother during the pregnancy has a lot to do with the foundation of the psyche and experiences of the child to come. So you will oftentimes see a soul that will wait until the last minute, and literally as the baby is coming out, the soul will slide in. You will also see scenarios where the second that the sperm and the egg get together, that bang, they're in there because they want the whole ride. Do you know, they're in there for the entire experience.
Yeah.
So it's different in every single case.
Would it be fair to say, using the information that you've given us, that if the soul decides not to jump in at any stage, then the engine will run for a while, even after it's born, but it won't survive, because that's kind of conflicting with what Thomas Williams says. Thomas reckons that if no soul occupies the vehicle, that the body can still survive and grow up, but it won't be a human. It will be a synthetic being. Does that make any sense?
I know and I know where you're going with that. That's definitely not what I'm describing here. What I'm saying is that, in the case of a soul coming into a human body, that if that body makes it, let's say, through the birth process, and now you've got that crying baby sitting in front of you, or you have the baby that's there, whether it's very ill or whether it's perfectly perfect in whatever way, once it's out like that, there is a soul occupying that body. Now, it might not be staying there for very long, as in if the body is going to, pass away within minutes or within days, or if it's there for the long haul, then so is the soul. But the soul is 100% in control with the experience that it's going to have. So what I'm saying is it's so misinformed to believe that if someone chooses to do something that's right for their own life story, that they have taken away the chance for a soul to live. It absolutely, I would say emphatically with my hand on my heart, that from my experience, that is not how it works.
Okay, that's a fair point. Where to next? Peter has a question. He says he heard that if he puts a photo of something bad in the freezer or the fridge, such as photos of guns, nuclear weapons, etc., does this help to make them not have so much power over us? Does that make sense?
If you put the photo
in the freezer.
In the freezer.
Yeah.
How interesting. I'd say there's something to that. Honestly, I was getting ready to laugh, but I'm like, no, hang a second. Emoto's research, the Japanese researcher who did all of the experimentation with water crystals, where he would splice a water crystal and, take it from the city center of Tokyo in the dirtiest fountain, and he would be able to place that water crystal in something with the word love written on it. Or he would freeze that slice and then expose it to a word that carried a high vibration or intention. So, you know what? Is he contributing in some scale to the collective consciousness of what happens there? Yeah, it's really kind of no different than praying or no different than meditating for a higher intent. So yeah, I'm not gonna dismiss that with a laugh. I actually, whether it's actually changing the structure by using the image, it's no different than when we light a candle for somebody because we're thinking of them or we're sending them our higher thought and intent. Does lighting the candle actually do anything? No, but it represents where our focus is. So if his focus becomes that photograph in the freezer, then who am I to say that that's not the same thing as his form of lighting the candle or prayer of a higher intent, or Emoto's, groundbreaking research of putting a high vibration word on a water crystal and changing its structure.
Okay. Yeah, because I actually heard a long time ago too that, if something was bothering you or something had a control or power, or you were giving it energy, then if you got this thing or whatever it may be it a photograph or just write the name of something down and then burn the piece of paper, that's supposed to, obviously, it's a symbolic way of being released from this whatever it may be that has hold or power over you.
Yeah, it's a symbolic representation of where your focus and intent are. Focus and intent are merely vibrational frequencies of a higher state of awareness or a focused intent concentration of something. So, it's just symbolic. At New Year's Eve, my girls and I, every year, we write down the things that we want to accomplish for the upcoming year, and we toss them into the fireplace. It's a ritual. When they see white smoke at the Vatican, does that mean that that actually had anything to do with the Pope? No, it's a representation of something. We use symbology and ritual in order to focus our intent. But prayer, is the classic example. When we pray over our food, the origins of that practice or to actually focus your intent onto the food. And now we know there's frequencies that can, 742 hertz does that, that you can actually remove the toxicity from your food by playing that frequency around your food, that you're raising the vibration, that if someone's a meat eater and they're afraid that the meat had, the animal was fearful at the time of its death, you can actually change the frequency of the meat by exposing it to 742 hertz.
742?
Yep.
Okay. Not 432, no?
432, the frequency of love. No, this is more specific. That's going through the solfeggio scales I'm talking about.
Okay.
So, yeah. 432, yeah, that's more of a global. That's, that's on the 528 line where you've got the 432, the 444, the 528. That's Tesla's 369 harmonic. So, yeah, there's all sorts of frequencies that can specifically be used for different things.
Yeah, but I think we hear Radio Caroline coming in there somewhere as well. Obviously that didn't get as far as American Radio Caroline. We spoke earlier on of the ascension, and Dougie actually had a comment, and I wanted to read it out, but I saved it. But Dougie says, the Kundalini symptoms have been going on for years. To me, Kundalini has been renamed the ascension. He says, a new word for the same thing. What do you reckon?
I would agree with Dougie.
That's good.
Yeah, I would agree with Dougie on that. Yeah, like I said, it's just we're wrapping stuff up in different packaging. This has been something that people have been talking about since the dawn of mankind. Since mankind had intelligence enough to think about it and discuss it amongst themselves, this has been going on, and people have been trying to package it, buy it, sell it, whatever. The relationship that you have with yourself and your soul and your earthly experience, your soul is coming from perfection. And I just think it's so comical when people, describe themselves as, I'm a human looking for a spiritual experience. And I'm like, yeah, well, it doesn't quite work that way, actually. Once you've been dead and you realize that you come from that place of total perfection and that everyone gets to go there. Sorry for the spoiler alert. You realize that we come from that space and that we're coming here. We're not here for the fairy tale. We're here for the full whack. We are here for the entire spectrum of emotions that being human has to offer. And let me tell you, when times get tough, I often have to sit myself down and have a good come to Jesus talk with myself, because I have to remind myself when I am suffering and I'm in pain that I am loving it just as much as when things are going my way.
Okay, well, listen, we have to wrap things up. So let's just say the last thing we'll say is, what's your prediction for till the end of the year? By this time, December 2018, what do you think is going to be happening, or do you have any idea into that? Any looking glass or crystal ball?
Are you talking about globally, personally?
Well, everything. Well, we did, at the start of the show, we talked about these energies and everything else. So, what do you feel? What's your take on globally what's going to happen, spiritually what's going to happen? Do you think there's going to be any major changes?
I think there's always major changes. So I believe that, again, you're going to continue to see people batting the ball back and forth over the net. It's opinions will always be there. Symptoms, what do you want to call them, kundalini or ascension symptoms, are always going to be there and always have, because we have been progressing and digressing since this world began. So as far as things that are going to happen by the end of the year, yeah, I'd love to see some great stuff happen. But you know what? Great stuff is happening every single day. And do I know that there's going to be some tragic stuff that happens? Absolutely. But you don't have to be psychic to know that. Look at the state of the world that we live in, and you know those things are going to happen. What I encourage people to do is to hone in their personal reactions, to really call BS on themselves and their judgments. We are so quick to judge what other people are doing, saying, feeling, and we haven't walked in their shoes. We haven't experienced life through their eyes and through their feelings. And if people would just knock it off trying to come up with the perfect answer and trying to be all this and that and just sit in the moment, because the truth and reality of it all is that we're all one being here. And as RuPaul said, the rest is all drag. So we've come to this earth as one dynamic being that has shattered and fractioned into millions of pieces and is here to experience everything that the earth plane has to offer, because it's unique and it's dynamic, it's flawed, and it's perfect. And so rather than trying to figure out are good things or bad things going to happen, sure, both. It's all about how you perceive them, and it's all about how you apply those things so that when the tough times do come, you're completely prepared and you're not going to crash, that you know how to ride the wave rather than taking the big spike when things get great and then the big plunge when things go badly. If you know how to ride that wave, then you're going to have a much more pleasant experience here. And to remove the fear, you've got nothing to be afraid of. You put yourself here.
Okay.
And if you just remember that, you will have a most enjoyable experience. And by the end of 2018, you might just be a little bit more comfortable in your own skin.
Might do. Okay, Mary, listen, we've reached that time and we'll have to let you go. But a big thank you for coming on and having a chat with us and giving us a breakdown of your thoughts and all the questions that we had tonight and your answers to them. Thanks a lot for coming on. I'm going to pass you over to Steve. Steve's going to get your contact details where people can find you. Steve.
Thanks so much, Alan. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Mary, it's been absolutely fantastic having you on there. A lot of positive comments and a lot of questions, and apologies for any questions that we haven't got to, but we are up against the clock. We do have a link to your website, maryhelenhensley.com. Can people find all the information that they need on there, or are there any other avenues of communication?
Absolutely. I'm on Facebook, Dr. Mary Helen Hensley, author, and I'm on Twitter. That's DOC at DOCMHH. And it's pretty easy. Like, I've got tons of YouTube videos. So all you gotta do is throw in my name, and there it is. And just get people to keep their eyes open. I have a new book about death coming up in September that'll be launching in O'Connell Street in Dublin, that I've written with author Patricia Scanlon and Aidan Story and Pam Young, and it seeks to take the fear out of the entire death process for people. So keep your eyes open for that. It's called Bringing Death to Life. If you go on to any of the social media, you'll see stuff around it. So it's an exciting year coming up, and I'm very, very grateful that you've given me this opportunity and this platform to speak to you.
No problem.
And to everybody for all the questions.
Great stuff. All right, Mary, that's great. Thanks a lot. Just stay with us there. We're just going to pop off to a musical break, and we'll be back after this.
Good evening. Here is the news.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com and peoplesinternetradio.com.
Okay, and we're back. Good information from Mary Helen Hensley. As we did say, her website is maryhelenhensley.com, and you can check it out there. She does have links to all the relevant information, to downloads, videos, and also to her books as well. So, good information on there. Someone did say we should do a part 2. Well, if the time is right, we will get her on again.
Yeah, myself and Steve just had a quick chat during the break there, musical break, and, just touching base on the whole idea of, the homeless crisis in Ireland and the refugees coming over. And we kind of said, well, look, nobody's taken it out on any of the Syrian people or what happened. I mean, the Irish people have gone through an awful lot in their life. Even through the 60s, the Irish people in the north that went on, things happened in the 60s, when, the bombs were going off up the north in the 60s and all the troubled times. And so, it's nothing got to do with individual races. It's just that we know there's a homeless problem in Ireland. It can be fixed. All problems can be fixed. We just don't have the people in government, to fix it, because they don't want to fix it for whatever reason. They controlled and, they just won't do, what we want them to do, what the people want them to do. Maybe there's a bigger picture going on, and having people from abroad coming into the country, that we've heard that before. I've read about that before. It's been talked about to water down the nationality. So you're not Irish, but you're 20% Irish, 20% Syrian, 20% English or whatever. And this is part of the whole New World Order thing. And that's why, something I read about, that's why Bertie and the Celtic Tiger happened. The deal was that Bertie would get the money from Europe if he opened up the borders and let everybody come in. And of course, we got the money, and the borders were open, and then we couldn't pay the money back. So not only did the people come in, we got asset stripped. Now, like I've lived in London and I've done an awful lot of travelling. So, as I say on my Facebook page, and people have seen it, we are spiritual beings in physical form. Nationality is one that we're human beings. Spiritual beings in human bodies. So this has nothing got to do with race or anything. It's just how the people at the top are manipulating the system. So we fight between ourselves, and this is what's happened with the referendum that's coming up. People have fallen out with each other. Friends and family members that have been friends and related to each other and got on with each other, all of a sudden are falling out with each other because of a difference of opinion. And something that Thomas said in his show as well, and something that I'll say to people as well, we keep having this impression that there's only two ways to vote. You either vote yes or no. And I'm not just talking about the referendum coming up, I'm talking about politics or whatever, in any referendum. But there's another way. There's yes vote, no vote, and don't vote. Alright, that's the third way. So there are three ways to vote. Just remember that. It's not this kind of duality where there's only yes and no. I mean, there's yes, no, and no vote at all. Don't vote at all. There's that option there as well. And that could be on any referendum, not just the one coming up, but any referendum. I'm just speaking generically at the moment. I'm not particularly going to pick that one out. And the same with, the political parties. We have, 4 or 5 political parties. Well, maybe the other option is not to vote for any of them. So just remember that. That's the third option, So just keep that in mind. Now, for next week, we have, our guest is Pat Green. Now, Pat, as some of you know, is the leader of DDI. But we're not going to be talking politics. We're not going to be talking politics. We're going to be talking about health. I know Pat is big into health. And he's mentioned that before. So we said, well, listen, Pat, do you want to come on the show and we'll talk all about health and what he knows and his experiences with health and what he does for himself on a regular basis, because we all have to do these things. There's a lot of people who are experiencing different things, illnesses, not being well, not sleeping, headaches. There's obviously something going on. Well, we know there's something going on, right? We know, we've been told, and people have experienced it, and myself and Steve have experienced things as well, and other people have said it to us as well, off the record, that they're experiencing different things. So, is the energy changing on the planet? Is it kind of going to a frequency that we are kind of struggling a bit with it? Maybe that's the case. Maybe that's what the problem is. That we're all kind of struggling a bit because of these energies that are coming in. And they have to be subtle. I mean, I think if they do come in one big wave, people saying about the event, well, maybe these energies have been hitting the planet since, I think around 2002, 2003. And they've been subtly changing, and people have been feeling them over time. So, we just have to kind of do what we can with the resources that we have, and if there's any tips that we can put out there on what to do and help, or get people on to talk about health, we'll do that. Now, I'd also like to point out, I don't know whether you've seen it, but again, this is not endorsement, by the way, but Steve did a video on the Lemurian plug, and his method of getting it to plug into the wall was much better than mine, because I was using sticky back tape for the time being.
I think you started off using chewing gum.
Yeah, something like that. But there is a video up that we posted up on Facebook on MeWe. So if you want to pop over there and check it out and just have a look, and that's what Steve did. We are getting you're still getting emails in from people saying that they've tried it. Now, I did meet a person who was suffers from hyper-electric sensitivity during the week. A lady called Anya, who I met on the Pain Genie course, and I met up with her in a local for a coffee during the week, because she's gone through a few problems. Anyway, we got talking, and I happened to mention the Lemurian plug, and I said to her, look, she suffers from electric sensitivity, and she didn't feel the energy, and she's in a location at the moment where in the house above her head they have a 5-6 gigahertz antenna in the loft. I'll explain to you later what's going on.
Jesus.
And so she's trying to get them to get out because she suffers from this. So I've said to her, well, if anybody will feel any different of experience, will be her. So she's thinking about getting on one, and it'd be good to get feedback on that. I'm just watching the time.
Would you not have just taken yours out and let her have a hold of it?
No, because I didn't even think of it. We didn't even get to that talking until at the end of the conversation. Right. So it wasn't something that was going to be planned in the conversation. And she lives up the north anyway, so it was a bit of a trek. But anyway, if there's any news on that, we'll keep you posted. But for myself anyway, Alan James, take it easy, have a good week. Any news, let us know, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Okay, that was short and sweet. Leave me with a couple of seconds. 13 seconds. Anyway, yeah, look, it's been great having everyone here in both of the chat rooms. Thanks for your company and for your questions. And Barry Prince is up next on People's Internet Radio with the big puzzle, so stay tuned for that. And we'll see you all again next week. So until then, have a fantastic week to everyone listening all around the world on the web and also in the chat room as well. So until next week, for myself, Stephen George, take care. Bye-bye.